Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ashley Mang. I'm with the Volpe Center, and I help to support the Center for Innovative Finance Support Initiatives. I'd like to welcome you today to the What's New in Innovative Finance webinar. We're really glad that you could join us. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few logistics. We ask that you please mute yourselves and turn your cameras off when you're not speaking. Please feel free to use the chat pod to ask questions throughout the webinar. We've also reserved time at the end for questions as well. So during those Q&A sessions, again, please use the chat pod or the hand raise function found at the top of the meeting to ask questions. If you would like to turn on live captioning, you can do so by clicking on the ellipsis at the top of the meeting and select Turn on Live Captioning. We will be playing videos during the webinar, so if you're joining us via a tablet or smartphone and have any difficulty seeing the videos, please let us know in the chat pod so that we can follow up with you after the webinar. Finally, we would like to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. Okay, so let's get started. Today's webinar will provide an overview of innovative finance tools and techniques that transportation professionals like yourselves can consider when implementing projects. In addition to that sort of higher level overview, we'll learn about some new initiatives that the folks from the Center for Innovative Finance Support are working on, including CIFS video series and innovation profiles. 3 projects that used innovative finance techniques will be highlighted via pre-recorded videos to illustrate how the application of these tools can look. And finally, we'll remind you of some resources to look out for in the near future. We have some members from the FHWA team joining us, as well as 3 guest speakers from the agencies whose projects are featured in those project spotlight videos. Pete Mankakis is the Innovative Finance Program Manager, and he'll be presenting this information today. Jill Stark and Gary Greening are also available to answer any questions. And then we have our 3 guest speakers, like I mentioned, from the project spotlights, who are also joining us today to field any questions specific to their projects. We'd like to thank Tanya Arnold, Erica Rooney, and Rich Briere for joining us today. We'll hear a little bit more from them and about their projects soon, but in the meantime, I'll turn it over to Pete to kick it off and get us started to tell you more about the work CIFS has been working on. Pete?
Thank you, Ashley, and welcome everyone. And thank you for joining us today. So there's a lot of items that we're going to try to cover today. There's a lot of interesting things going on in the world of innovative finance that we really wanted to share with our federal, state, and local partners. So I want to just kick this off because we're going to be using this term innovative finance a lot. I want to make sure we're all kind of on the same page. So when you hear this term, you know what we're kind of referring to. Up on the screen, you'll see, the definition that we use at the center. And it's really defining different tools and techniques that are going to supplement your traditional highway financing methods. So anything other than using your federal aid program or your state's gas tax, anytime you start getting out of that realm to start funding and financing projects, you start getting into the world of innovative finance. A lot of these tools and methods, you can see just a kind of a sampling on the screen there of what we mean when we say innovative finance tools and methods. A lot of these have been around a long time. Some of them are new, but even the ones that have been around and kind of established programs over the last 10, 20 years, we're finding new and innovative ways to apply them. So this is something that we really wanted to spotlight today. And you're going to hear a little bit. We have some great speakers that we have pre-recorded questions from our local project sponsors, but then we're going to have kind of a Q&A panel after we see those videos. And I think you'll get to see like a lot of different ways that you can kind of look at innovative finance. One of the big things that we're working on at the center is kind of a new initiative to provide innovative financing information, tools, and resources to the planning community. What we found is that there are a lot of folks who are involved in the planning process who don't sink in or have not been exposed to these kind of tools and methods and don't really see them as a matter of course in their day-to-day activities. So we wanted to make sure, because we've heard a lot from the planning community saying like, well, I wish I knew more about innovative finance, and maybe there's ways we can apply this to our planning process and program in general. So the big initiative that we've been working on in the center is how to, to put together information and materials and present them to the planning community that will make sense. So a lot of the things that we'll be talking about today are new initiatives that we've designed just for the planning community. So when we talk about innovative finance and planning, there are a lot of benefits that can come about, having this knowledge and these resources at the time in your planning phases. Again, what we're talking about when we talk about innovative finance and planning is really how to leverage your existing program. And what does that mean? What does it mean, instead of looking at a project by project basis on how to finance a project, but really looking at your program as a whole and looking at the long-term impacts of what financing can do. Again, some of the immediate benefits are, accelerating your project delivery by, having an influx of resources and revenues and financing upfront instead of doing it as a pay-as-you-go, year-to-year method. Bringing in the discussion of innovative finance has other, longer-term benefits. Is that when you get to bring in the discussion about innovative finance earlier, you can get stakeholder and public awareness about these kind of maybe new tools that have been, or maybe be new to your area. So, there's a lot of benefits, and we can go into this a lot. We do in some of our resources and our training materials. But so I wanted to talk about what those things are a little bit. And well, before I get into this is just kind of an example of information on what we say, or what can innovative finance do in your planning. If on the screen here, you can see on the right, you see the typical pay-as-you-go method is where you kind of wait, several years to build up the revenues to be able to deliver a project, and maybe build it in phases as the funds become available. When you do it that method, you also have to deal with inflation. We look at it as an inflation rate, and then we kind of, in innovative financing and financing in general, we look at that. What does that compare to what the current rates are? So right now, rates are still very competitive and actually outpacing the rates of inflation many times. So you can also see not only a project delivery schedule being accelerated by when you finance projects, but you also can see some cost savings as well if you're going to have projects scheduled to build in out years that may be more expensive to build in 5-10 years. So we see there's a lot of more than just the delivering a project sooner for either safety reasons or economic development reasons. You can also have a cost savings as well, depending on how you put together your financing plan. So we've been, like I've been saying, one of the new initiatives for the Center of Innovative Finance Support is developing this innovative finance for planners and communities. And we include communities in there because we know that there are a lot of communities who also could benefit from this information and how to put together a smaller program and how to look at it in a longer term and applying different sources of revenues. So we wanted to put together some information and kind of describe all these different, what we call tools in the toolbox, of all these different methods and ways you can go about financing through federal programs and inside and outside of the DOT. We have a lot of different programs with federal highways and the Department of Transportation, but there's also other programs federally that we can work with quite well. So the things that you see on the bottom here again are just some of the resources that we have available at, and we don't expect anyone to be an expert in any of these at any time. You kind of use these as you need them. So we wanted to make sure that there's a place to go and find this information when you're ready for it. So what's upcoming in September, we're going to be launching a new web page on our CIFS website. It's going to be called, Innovative Finance for Planners and Communities. And in that, we're going to have one of our highlight materials is going to be a Innovative Finance Planners briefing book. And this is going to be a kind of a high-level review of what tools are available in a condensed document. So it'll be a really good, hopefully a desk side reference for folks in the planning community or the local project development communities that they can go reference to find out kind of highlighted information and where to find the more detailed resources as well. So this is really a companion. If you're familiar, if you're on the call and you're actually in the planning community, you may have seen our FHWA Office of Planning briefing book. So this is really made to be a kind of companion to that document. So if you're familiar with that document, you'd be really comfortable with how the look and feel of our briefing book works as well. Again, this will be live in September. We're looking at kind of a big rollout for the briefing book and the webpage. And so Federal Highways folks, you'll be seeing a kind of a teaser webinar on what the book is and kind of talking about what the main topics are and who the audience is for that. So we'll be rolling that out first to our federal partners in Federal Highways, and then hope to get that information out to our state and local partners as well. Other things that we have that will be linked back to our webpage. We have expanded training opportunities. So we're looking to, as we roll out our Planners and Communities webpage, that also will provide information and resources on how to get additional training on maybe an overview of all the innovative finance topics, or maybe you're interested in one or two, and we can kind of have a detailed workshop put together for your region or area. So that's another big push that we're doing, is really kind of tailoring our current training tools to different audiences that could really benefit from it. The other things, again, to complement both this, but there's also a new thing for our center, is we've developed a series of videos that are overview videos. They're all about probably like 12 to 15 minutes long, and they highlight the different innovative finance tools. So it's kind of, and so you don't have to go and read through a whole bunch of information. You can kind of watch a video and kind of just get that high level, and gives you a sense of what we're going to talk about if you ask for more detailed training or information. And again, the last thing we put together are new profiles that spotlight these innovations, and we kind of wanted to make sure that we pick novel or interesting projects that really show the flexibility of some of these programs. So again, this is just what it looks like, our video series page. You can see we have 4 live now. The next 4 will be coming live as they get developed. We're hopefully to have the next 2 up in the next probably a couple weeks. So they're coming along, and they're, like I said, I think they're a really great resource if you just want to have where to get started. If this seems overwhelming to figure out what does someone mean when they say the word Garvey? Well, this is a great way to kind of introduce yourself to the world of the Garvey program, or state infrastructure banks, or public-private partnerships. So hopefully this will be a great area for people to poke around and find some more information about innovative finance. And this is what I was referring to when I said the innovation profiles. We have an innovation profile page. Again, targeting really the innovation more than the projects. We have some, of course, example projects in these profiles, but we wanted to make sure there was the focus was really on the tools that the projects were using. We also, if you're not familiar with our website, we have a really extensive library of project profiles as well, that you can go and look for different projects around the country and see what kind of innovative finance tools they've used. Maybe you can search by your state to see what's available or what's been done, to see if you're familiar with them or not, or maybe to figure out there's some lessons learned in your own area that before you move on and maybe reapply the same tools. So this is a really exciting part, I think, of our webinar today. Is we wanted to talk about all these new things that are coming up in Federal Highways and the Center for Innovative Finance Support, regarding our initiative for planners, our new, our video series, and our innovation series. But we really wanted to look at the practitioners themselves and the project sponsors around the country and find some interesting new ways that people are doing financing for projects that may not be the first thing that you think about when you think about innovative financing in these tools that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. Again, the innovations that are being spotlighted here are the use of the TIFIA financing, and that's through the Build America Bureau, and specifically their Rural Project Initiative of lending. We're also going to be looking at value capture tools, specifically transportation utility fees, and how that has been applied very successfully in an area. And also looking at how Garvey financing, again, one of our more established innovative finance programs, and how they can be used in new ways that maybe have not been thought about before in other areas. So really excited to talk about these three projects, and I'm actually even more excited to listen to the videos of the project sponsors. And then again, once these are all finished, we'll play all three in succession. We're going to invite the speakers on to join us live here, so you can have a little bit of a Q&A. If you have some follow-up questions that were kind of raised while you're watching the videos, that'll be the time to bring up those questions.
The San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority, or RTA, offers a variety of transportation services within California's Central Coast region. The RTA operates a public transportation system as well as a countywide ADA complementary paratransit service. In September 2020, the RTA was the first to finance a project through the TIFIA Rural Project Initiative, or RPI. They will use the RPI loan to construct a new administration headquarters and bus maintenance facility that will be completed in February 2022. The new RTA bus maintenance facility is nearly 3 times larger than their current facility and is being constructed to accommodate battery electric buses as the RTA transitions away from liquid-fueled vehicles. The total cost of the new facility is $26.7 million, about half of which was funded using the RPI loan. The authority obtained the RPI financing for a 35-year term at a fixed rate of 0.7%, pledging a portion of its state-allocated sales taxes and farebox revenues to guarantee repayment of the loan. Tanya Arnold, RTA Deputy Director and Chief Financial Officer, will tell us more about the project and how their program has benefited from TIFIA RPI financing. Tell us more about some of the project's objectives.
This project allowed the RTA to increase efficiencies as we transition from diesel fueling for our fixed route vehicles to electrical. We're able to phase in the additional electrical infrastructure as we phase in the additional vehicles. We're able to implement solar canopies that can allow for pull-down charging of the vehicles, and we will be ready for the state mandate. As part of the evaluation process for this project, we reviewed on-site fueling versus the electrical infrastructure, and the cost-benefit analysis proved that the electrical infrastructure is where we needed to go.
What are the benefits to using the TIFIA RPI program?
The San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority closed on our TIFIA loan at an interest rate of 0.7% over 35 years. It was a significant cost savings over the 3% available through local banks and a traditional loan. The scope of the debt service payments under the TIFIA project are about $470,000 a year to the RTA. In comparison with our current lease, which is about $477,000 a year, only going up based on the cost of living, and our prior commitments to the tenant improvements that were completed for our current facility, that total cost that we were paying out of pocket was $697,000. TIFIA's longer-term 35-year borrowing rate and the extremely low interest rate were keys to the estimated annual cost savings of over $200,000 for the agency, which is significant. That allows operations to continue and expand over time. The Rural Project Initiative also picked up the DOT TIFIA advisor fees for counsel and financial advisors. Those costs are not traditionally picked up under the TIFIA program, just under the Rural Project Initiative. Although this project is small in the scope of TIFIA, at a total project cost of $26.7 million. The budget for the RTA operations is $14 million. So this was not a small project to the RTA.
What advice would you give agencies seeking to use the TIFIA RPI financing for projects?
The TIFIA process was long and complex. The RTA was the first in the nation to close on a TIFIA RPI loan. The RTA wanted to set expectations for TIFIA related to small agencies so that others interested in the program would not face a bar set too high. One of the key items that RTA wanted TIFIA to understand is the cash flow needs of a small agency versus those of a large agency. Our partners, such as our financial advisors and bond legal counsel, walked us through the overwhelming process. They were especially critical to an agency like RTA, who had no formal prior debt issue and needed to obtain a credit rating for the first time and educate our board of directors on the TIFIA process.
The city of Lake Oswego, Oregon, an urban community with about 40,000 residents, is located about 8 miles south of Portland and has 181 miles of streets that their Department of Public Works maintains. After enabling state legislation authorized the use of transportation utility fees, Lake Oswego implemented a street maintenance fee in 2003 to meet the city's repair and street maintenance needs. The fee is based on the number of trips a particular land use generates and is collected through the city's regular utility bill and managed by the Public Works engineering staff. It is the preferred alternative source of funding for the city's infrastructure and, as of fall 2020, has generated about $28.9 million for the city, which has helped them maintain a balanced budget. Erica Rooney, Lake Oswego's Public Works Director and City Engineer, will tell us more about the positive impact the street maintenance fee has had on the city's local transportation system and discuss the importance of community support when implementing such fees. Why did you decide to implement a transportation utility fee, and how has it benefited your overall transportation system?
In the state of Oregon, gas tax had actually been frozen for almost a decade at that point. In 1993 was the last time gas tax had been increased. And so what cities, especially local small jurisdictions, were finding was that their gas tax funds were getting depleted. They weren't going up to match the increased cost of construction. What the transportation utility fee or street maintenance fee here in Lake Oswego does for us is it provides us with a consistent funding source. And we use that almost exclusively for our pavement management section of our work. So every year we do a large number of roadways where we either do full reconstruct, perhaps a grind and overlay, ADA ramps of course go with that, or even a large number of slurry seals. We are working to increase our pavement condition index by dedicating these specific funds for that effort. And then other funds like gas tax, we're able to use those for other maintenance activities within the transportation system.
Can you explain the legislative process and requirements needed to implement a transportation utility fee in Lake Oswego?
We did not have a code section that addressed this type of fee. We had other fees identified, such as for sewer and water. We needed to develop one specifically for the street fund or for transportation. So a new chapter of our city code was developed so that we could be transparent to our constituents that this would be used very specifically for these type of activities. This is how it would be collected and also how it would be used and how it would be increased on an indexed basis. So that code language was developed. We were fortunate enough that our process is relatively easy in that by resolution, our city council is able to add a new chapter to their code, And that's how the legislative process was done for the city of Lake Oswego. Of course, there were a lot of public hearings associated with that prior to final completion, but we had just the development of code that was necessary for this activity.
How did you determine the fee?
The city of Lake Oswego made sure that the proposed fee was going to be reasonable compared to what other cities were charging. So at $3.50 a month, that seemed like a reasonable amount to ask residents to pay on their utility bill. And since then, the fee has now risen to around $9.95 a month. We like to often remind folks to put that into comparison of the cost of various goods, such as a latte nowadays costs $4.50. So for the cost of 2 lattes a month, everyone contributes to the pavement program.
How did you garner community support?
As with any new fee, oftentimes there is opposition to increase in costs. And so we did a very robust outreach program that involved meeting with the business stakeholders such as the Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, our grocery and industrial stakeholders in this area, and then also with our neighborhood association organizations who are very active. We reached out to make sure that they understood what this fee would be and how specifically it would be used. It wasn't going to be used openly for things such as parks or for more bodies at City Hall, but specifically for transportation related improvements. For that, we get a city that is actually known for its beautiful downtown core, the brick sidewalks, the hanging baskets that adorn our streetlights, and for the actual pavement condition, which is far better than many other cities in the region.
The Indian Nations Council of Governments, MPO, or INCOG, played a key role in the implementation of the Gilcrease Expressway project in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The project will complete a 6-mile gap in the expressway, improve access and safety to the regional port, and alleviate congestion near Tulsa's central business district. The MPO has pledged $6 million per year for 15 years from their anticipated future Surface Transportation Program funds, which has helped to capitalize $71 million worth of Garvey bonds issued by the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. INCOG's commitment of funds and ODOT's position as the debt issuer provided long-term stability for the project. This project is unique in that an MPO pledged future federal aid allocations back to the DOT to secure a Garvey-backed bond issuance, making INCOG an example of a Garvey subrecipient. Garvey bonds represented about 20% of the total project funds. Rich Briere, Executive Director at INCOG, will tell us more about the importance of early coordination and how committing project funding set a powerful signal of support for the project to their partners. Early coordination in the planning phase was a key element of the Gilcrease Expressway project's success. Can you explain how initial coordination began?
We have had a long-standing, excellent working relationship between our MPO and our partner, ODOT. We've worked together on many projects and issues over the years. We don't always agree, but we try to find that common ground, the win-win, to solve problems. And we're not afraid to be creative and innovative. And we interact with our state officials at all levels. Early coordination was extremely important. In our case, the project was actually identified on the region's expressway plan more than 50 years ago. It was a remaining unfunded portion of the Metropolitan Expressway system. So major portions of the corridor were built over many decades, but a 5-mile gap, including a major river crossing, remained largely unfunded. So over the years, our local partners, the City of Tulsa and Tulsa County, have secured much of the right-of-way, completed functional plans, and completed an environmental assessment, and our state DOT was involved in much of that work. Yet we had a gap of funding, and it took all of us working together in a coordinated fashion to address that as a part of this financing package.
How did you work with ODOT to create a complementary financing option for the project?
We had been putting a significant amount of money on an annual basis into connecting portions of the corridor over several decades. So I think the region saw this as an opportunity to complete the project in a timely fashion by making this long-term pledge that basically was at the same dollar amount that we were putting in annually, but this is something that could see the project completed in the very near term. Securing sufficient funding to complete the project took many partners, not only ODOT, but our state turnpike authority as well. The authority was considering a major funding initiative called Driving Forward, and initially proposed to fund the toll bridge as part of that package, but not the full 5-mile corridor project. Developing the full funding package required layered financing involving numerous funding sources, including not only the Garvey bonds, but TIFIA, the first TIFIA project in Oklahoma, tolling, and a public-private financing model.
Have you experienced any unique challenges utilizing Garvey financing? How did you address them?
Garvey financing, layered with other sources, including toll revenue and TIFIA, did add complexity. With respect to Garvey financing, the fact that ODOT had experience using Garvey financing previously was definitely a help. What's unusual in this case is the Garvey financing involved the pledge of sub-allocated STP block grant funds to the MPO rather than funds that simply were allocated to the state. So the other thing that was unusual about this was that this was a commitment for a 15-year period of time, which is longer than many other Garvey programs. But at the end of the day, bonds proved to be very marketable, and the Garvey revenue through the grant anticipation notes was secured for the project.
Well, thank you very much, Tanya, Rich, and Erica, for those videos. I find them interesting, and I've actually seen them a couple times now, so I get something out of them every time I watch them. At this point, we're gonna, Ashley just spotlighted you, and I'm hoping that we can open it up for some Q&A from the audience here.
And we don't have any questions in the chat box, so if you do have a question, just go ahead and turn on your camera if you're comfortable, and make sure to unmute yourself.
I have a question just to follow up with Rich. Has there been any negative impacts to your program, pledging your future federal aid? Have you seen any, has it come up as any issues about programming? Now that you have tied, for the next 15 years of, a portion of your sub-allocations, to the debt servicing?
Peter, we haven't had any criticism from any of the other local governments that we work with through the MPO process. And I think part of it is we have been committing $6 million annually for quite a number of years. So this was not an increase in our commitment of funds. It was continuation at that same level for a fixed and predictable period. And in this case, also the match obligation was something that the city of Tulsa no longer needed to bear completely. So it really benefited them, but there were no criticism from the other jurisdictions within our area. And they really see this as a regional project.
Good. And while I'm on, Tanya, I had a question for you. I know your project's ongoing, correct? The construction?
Yes.
So when it's completed, are you looking at taking advantage of delaying debt service payments after substantial completion?
Yes, so we did have to do some local borrowing in order to comply with the various requirements for the TIFIA borrowing. So TIFIA can only cover 49% of the borrowing cost for the project. So we did have a small amount of local borrowing that we had to do with that higher interest rate. So we're paying back that higher interest rate loan first, and then we're picking up on the TIFIA portion later on.
What did your other lenders think about the rate that you got from TIFIA?
They were astounded.
It's a pretty great rate. I mean, even right now for the RPI loans, they're under 1%. It's just you can't. It's almost like even money at that point. You're really talking. I know from other federal programs too. When they hear about our federal program with the Rural Projects Initiative, they're quite astounded on what we can offer to rural areas. And again, just for everyone on the call, when we talk about this Rural Project Initiative, our definition at DOT for rural is any area outside an urban area that's 50,000 or more. So anything that is residing in an area that's outside that urban zone of 150,000 or more is considered rural by the TIFIA standards. So this is, it's really flexible, and I know that they consider if 51% of the project is within that rural definition, the whole project's considered rural for TIFIA. So a lot of great flexibility in this program. So I'm glad you were able to take advantage of it and be the first to do so.
Yeah, and it was one interesting thing related to that population definition. At first, we were not understanding that we would be eligible because we do have a population that's over 50,000, which for 5307 funding is considered urbanized, but for the TIFIA portion, it's less than 150. So just clarifying those definitions for each program was really helpful.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's really important to understand all these. There's definitions of rural. Again, USDOT has several definitions of rural, and then when you go to other federal agencies, they have definitions of rural. They're completely different. So it's really good to make sure you're matching up the definition to the program. Jill, did we have any other questions or in the chat pod, or Gary?
No, there are no questions in the chat pod.
Okay. Well, Tanya and Rich and Erica, thank you so much for joining us today and being available to field some questions, I guess, from me. And again, yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. And thanks for your work on the projects.
Thanks, Peter. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we're gonna wrap up a couple things. And I hope everyone got a chance to take that in as far as that there's kind of different ways to look at innovative finance. We will have this webinar recorded, and we're going to be posting it on our website once it's done being recorded and cleaned up. So if you missed this, or you think someone in your office or someone you work with would find this interesting, please go to our website to find in a couple weeks when we get it posted. It'll be out there for viewing. Those clips will also be on our YouTube, the FHWA YouTube channel shortly. We're just getting them posted hopefully by the next week. So you can also find those clips individually as well. So just to wrap things up, so what's new in innovative finance? I think you heard, we have a lot of different things going on. Upcoming soon, the briefing book will be live. And with that means we're also going to be looking at down the way is putting together some regional peer exchanges to look at the practitioners who are using innovative finance in their planning process, and kind of learning from them and seeing what information we can bring back again to augment our list of tools and resources and information to find out what the actual practitioners are doing out in the field and how we can kind of create some templates for that. again, we're always available to have workshops and training opportunities for planners and local communities, as well as, of course, just technical assistance on when you're, actually implementing some of these innovative finance tools, or maybe you don't know exactly who to talk to, and if it's not a DOT program, but we can also work as that liaison for you, for that real-time technical assistance, and kind of work together with different programs within Federal Highway, USDOT, and other federal agencies as well. So I know there's a lot of information, so I'm very hoping I'm hoping that someone walks away with one bit of information. But again, the best place to start is our website. And another thing, on the next slide, you'll see all the different things that we'll have available. Like I said, the planners and communities webpage is not live yet. That we're looking at September 1st to have that available. But again, plenty of information on the CIFS website. If you can just Google FHWA Center for Innovative Finance Support, and you'll find us right there. It'll probably be the first thing that pops up. And that's where you can find our videos, links to that on YouTube. We have our innovation profiles, and just a lot of information, guidance documents, of course, all that kind of federal stuff that we have. But just some, we're trying to make things a little bit more accessible and viewable, in these days, and when we're doing a lot of things online, making this information kind of more palatable when you're at your desk. So, and again, always looking for feedback too. So if you enjoyed the format of this webinar, let us know. If you think we can do things differently in the future, it'll help us, deliver a better program as well. So with that, I'm just going to open it up again, just for general questions. It doesn't have to be specifically to our project spotlights, but just what's new in innovative finance in general, or just any innovative finance questions I can kind of help field while we have a couple minutes.
And we did have a comment about interest in the peer exchange opportunities. So, probably in the future, maybe we'll just talk about that maybe a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah. That's something, again, after we have our landing page and our rollout of the briefing book, that'll be our next step. So that's probably something coming up in the next few months, is we're going to be looking at how to get those practitioners of innovative finance and planning together, and again, like I said, either in some format, we're not exactly sure, depending on the amount of interest and amount of expertise we find, if it'll be kind of a regional peer exchange model or what. So again, we'll be learning more about that as we roll out the briefing book to planners and communities soon. Any other questions, Gary or Jill, that I missed?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to hold anyone up any longer. I'm glad that everyone was able to join us today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Again, my contact information is up on the screen. It looks like again, my contact information is on our website. If you have questions about, where to receive a copy of this webinar, you can send it to me, and we'll make sure we get a link to it when it's live. Ashley, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Pete. Again, I'll just thank everybody for joining us today. As Pete mentioned, those videos will be up on FHWA's YouTube channel, as well as this webinar too. So keep an eye out for those. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.